happy Sunday evening, May 31st, 2020. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this Sunday evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. We have a lot of news to get to this Sunday evening, so let's begin. First up, let's take a look at your COVID-19 in New Hampshire information, what you need to know. And here is a look at that COVID-19 in New Hampshire information, what you need to know. There are 4,545 number of people in New Hampshire have tested positive for COVID-19. 1,769,776 number of people in the United States who have tested positive. 242 number of deaths from COVID-19 in New Hampshire. 449 number of people who have been hospitalized with COVID-19 in New Hampshire. And 103,758 number of deaths from COVID-19 in the United States. Let's take a look at this current map right here of current cases in New Hampshire. Manchester, 407. And this map here shows you where total cases of COVID-19 are in New Hampshire. Manchester, 1155. Now let's take a look at these three charts here. Let's start with the first chart here. New cases each day in New Hampshire. In the purple, daily new positive COVID-19 cases. In the orange, new hospitalizations. And in the red are the deaths. And let's take a look at this chart here. Current cases. In the purple, total current COVID-19 cases. And in the orange, current hospitalizations. And let's take a look at this chart here. Total cases. In the purple, total positive COVID-19 cases. In the orange, total hospitalizations. In the red, deaths. And in the blue, recovered. Now let's take a look at this chart here. Age group of cases. Female and male of cases. And risk information. And now let's take a look at this chart here. Race/ethnicity of cases. Hospitalizations. Deaths, percent of New Hampshire population. Your common symptoms: fever, lack of smell, cough, chills, and difficult breathing. How it spreads, and prevention tips. And be sure to stay with the Riley King Network for the latest of your COVID-19 information. 6-year-old drowns in Salmon Falls River in Rollinsford. A 6-year-old boy drowned in the Salmon Falls River in Rollinsford on Saturday afternoon, officials said. Rollinsford Fire Chief said crews were called to an area of the river off Front Street just before 2:30 p.m. after family reported that the boy was missing in the river. The boy and his family had been wading in the water. An adult watching the boy briefly turned away, Runford said, and when they turned back, the boy was missing. Fish and game divers pulled the boy from the river about 4:45 p.m. The boy was unresponsive and taken to Wentworth Douglas Hospital and then airlifted to Massachusetts General Hospital, where he was later pronounced dead, officials said Sunday. Demonstration on the move in Boston, calling for justice for George Floyd. Let's take a listen to that video from WCVB Boston.
The New Hampshire Department of Corrections has immediate openings for corrections officers. Apply today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Breaking news right now with Maria Stefano. Samia Harding. Protests in Boston this afternoon. A Justice for George rally starting at Government Center right now.
And a second protest is set to begin at 6:30 this evening in Nubian Square in Roxbury. The crowd will then arch through the South End, Chinatown, and eventually end up at the State House.
We want to start at Government Center, where protesters are gathering. Our Charmin Sacchetti is there live. Charmin?
And we are here right at the corner of Government Center, right in front of the T-stop. And this is where a lot of the protesters are starting to gather. It appears as though they're on the move, headed down past City Hall Plaza. It's unclear where they're going. They're chanting, "No justice, no peace." They're holding signs. They want history to remember what happened to George Floyd. This is a peaceful protest. It started very small. It's gotten to be pretty sizable, but people are quietly protesting. Police are here. Boston police are on scene, and we saw some riding around on bicycles earlier. But largely, this is a peaceful protest. People trying to get the message out that this matters, and they really want history to remember what happened to George Floyd, so it does not happen again. Let's go ahead and send it back to you in the studio.
Charmin Sacchetti live downtown for us right now. That's stop one.
All right, Sean Chayabata is at stop number 2, a group of clergy who are marching right now to Boston Police Headquarters. And Sean, I believe you are in Roxbury right now?
Yeah, we're actually not far from Boston Police Headquarters right now. In fact, there are several hundred people who have joined in this march. It went from the corner of Malcolm X and Washington, and it's heading to the Boston Police Headquarters, where they're going to have some services right outside. But as we know, there are several hundred people here, but this is being led by Clergy United. Clergy from across the state have come here to spread this message that this is a peaceful protest. They are calling for the prosecution of all of the officers involved in George Floyd's death. Clearly, though, they have concerns not just about the issue in Minnesota, but they are also highlighting other issues of racial inequity as well as police brutality here in Boston and elsewhere. Their concern, though, is obviously that they want to make this a peaceful protest, and so that is part of their message as well, that they can have their voices heard and they can do it peacefully. Back to you.
All right, Sean Chayabata right there walking on the streets of Roxbury.
Well, let's go to Peter Eliopoulos. He's live in Nubian Square right now, where a protest is set to begin around 6:30 tonight. Take about a 3-mile walk from Nubian Square to the State House, Peter.
Yeah, that's right, Ed. We're right by the Dudley station right now. The T-stop is right there, and Sean is actually right down the street from us, so we're not far from where that protest is right now. But at 6:30, there is a protest that is set to start here where we are right now, then march down Tremont Street and down Washington Street and end up at the State House. Now, this group is calling for several actions, including federal action condemning police brutality, racial profiling, and the use of excessive force. They're also calling for bias training for police officers and psychiatric evaluation, and discharging officers if they have a lengthy enough record. Again, this protest expected to start at 6:30. We will be here throughout the evening for continuing coverage. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
And let's take a quick look right now, Government Center right here, where there is a Justice for George rally happening right now as we speak. We have Sky 5 up in the air. We have reporters all over the city.
We'll be back with updates throughout the afternoon. Pardon me. We'll have live coverage at News Center 5 beginning at 5. You can get updates anytime inside the WCVB app or at WCVB.com.
Okay, there you go on that video and that report. Hundreds of people gather in Portland to protest death of George Floyd. Take a look at this photo here. This is in Portland, Maine, we can tell you. As you can see, this is a protest in Portland, Maine. Hundreds gathered in protests outside the Portland City Hall Sunday afternoon in protest of the death of George Floyd of Minnesota. They chanted and carried signs that said phrases like "Black Lives Matter" and "I can't breathe." Protests started Friday and have been continuing throughout the weekend. Also on Sunday afternoon, a smaller protest of sorts gathered in Kennebunk. Some protesters there said they had plans to attend the Portland protest as well. Some protesters were wearing masks, though social distancing was not being widely practiced. This story will be updated as more information becomes available into our newsroom. More George Floyd protests planned in NYC, but no curfew after another night of clash violence. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC7 and why.
Today, KDB.com's 2020 Best Value Brand.
Breaking news impacting cities across the country. Another night of protests stretching across the nation, from windows smashed in St. Louis to fires and looting in California. Now, we are getting a look at the impact as people continue to call for justice over the death of George Floyd. Those protests continuing for another night right here in New York, with things turning violent in Brooklyn. Several police vehicles were damaged and set on fire. We're told at least 100 people were arrested. A similar scene in Manhattan, where protesters set fire to an NYPD van near Union Square. Eyewitness News reporter Candace McCowan live for us there this morning with the latest. Candace.
Again, all 345 protesters arrested in New York City last night alone, all from those protests that left behind a trail of destruction. This is what you can see here at 14th and 6th. This is at an Urban Outfitters. The windows are broken out. You can still hear the alarms inside that store, and there is merchandise missing. It was taken from this store. We saw video of people actually jumping in after the windows were broken and taking items out from inside. This was just part of a day of protest here near Union Square.
Send a message?
I think it does, to say, like, I'm not afraid to get hurt for what I believe in.
Yeah, and that was a protester right after she says she punched through the window of an NYPD patrol car. Protesters in Manhattan leaving behind a trail of destruction, from garbage cans set on fire to graffiti. NYPD saying that there were several instances when their officers were threatened, glass bottles thrown at them, officers taunted. We know that several dozen of them had injuries. And that follows Friday night when an attack where a woman threw a Molotov cocktail through a police van. She and her sister are now facing charges. Commissioner Shea saying that his officers are trying to de-escalate, but say it's hard to de-escalate when their lives are being threatened. And all, again, we know of at least 345 people who were arrested Saturday. Mayor de Blasio is saying that many of those arrested are from out of town.
If you went out peacefully to make a point about the need for change, you have been heard, and change is coming in this city. But those who are out there simply to create violence, those who are out there to express hatred towards our police officers, we won't tolerate that. If you're out there to commit an act of violence, you're going to get arrested.
Yeah, and again, 345 people arrested. We know of almost 50 police vehicles that were damaged. And this destruction that you see here at this store, this is not the only one. There's a Foot Locker down the street that also has windows in the front of it that are broken out. Now, we saw crews here earlier this morning. We thought they were going to actually clean it up, but they left. So this store remains wide open like this. Not even officers out here guarding it at this time.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And also, we can tell you that more protests over the George Floyd death are planned Sunday after thousands of demonstrators marched through the streets of New York City again on Saturday, blocking traffic, setting fires, and scuffling with police. Mayor Bill de Blasio said he hasn't considered a curfew after largely peaceful protests around the city Saturday gave way to scattered clashes between police and protesters later in the evening. Photos. Howard University protests for George Floyd as demonstrators marched to the White House. Take a look at these photos right here. Here are photos from that protest at Howard University. A Howard University protest is underway as demonstrators travel to the White House Sunday afternoon, calling for justice for George Floyd. Protesters tell ABC 7's Tim Barber that it's a peaceful protest and it isn't about black various rights. This is about human rights. And we will keep you updated on that protest when we get more information. Governor Cooper authorizes 450 National Guardsmen to be activated in North Carolina following George Floyd protests. Downtown Raleigh and Fayetteville businesses are evaluating the damage left after Saturday's protest turned violent. As of early Sunday morning, many people from the community began to gather to help clean up the damaged businesses. 4:15 p.m. update. Governor Cooper announced in a news conference that he has authorized 450 North Carolina National Guardsmen to mobilize in response of the George Floyd protests that turned violent in multiple cities Saturday night. North Carolina is among 15 other states and the District of Columbia that has called out the National Guard. The National Guardsmen are available upon request by local governments. So far, Raleigh and Charlotte haven't requested a response. Cooper on Sunday complimented the efforts of the peaceful protests, but condemned the violent actions that brought property damage to many businesses and structures, including the site of 1960 Ruth Worth sit-ins, a historic civil rights landmark. Let me make one thing clear. People are more important than property. Black lives do matter, Cooper said. As many cities across North Carolina began to issue state of emergencies like Fayetteville, Greensboro, and Charlotte, Cooper promised state support to mayors. Cooper ensured that city will be responsible for establish curfews if they choose to do so. Several demonstrations for racial equality planned for Sunday in South Florida. Chants of no justice, no peace fill the air in Lake Worth Beach and Lake Clear shores on Saturday. Demonstrators are protesting at multiple locations in Palm Beach County on Saturday in response to the death of George Floyd, who was killed after police officer knelt on his neck for more than 8 minutes in Minneapolis on Monday. Demonstrations were held at Memorial Park in Lake Clear Shores and Bryant Park in Lake Worth Beach in City Hall at Lake Worth Beach on Saturday. Demonstrations are also planned for Fort Pierce and West Palm Beach today. As of 10:30 p.m. on Saturday, there were no incidents of violence at the demonstrations in Palm Beach County. However, a demonstrator took down the American flag at Lake Worth Beach City Hall and burned it. City leaders are not pressing charges in that incident. And we will keep you updated if we hear any word on the two protests that happened today in Florida. George Floyd protests. Santa Monica flood with Black Lives Matter protests. With more George Floyd protests happening in Los Angeles today, Black Lives Matter demonstrations have flooded the streets in Santa Monica. A peaceful Black Lives Matter protest is now underway in Santa Monica Sunday, the day after similar protests escalated into violence and looting. Police struggled to maintain control of the crowd Saturday, and the National Guard was ultimately called in overnight to help maintain controls in Los Angeles. Protesters staged a sit-in Saturday afternoon protest in Santa Monica on Mountain Avenue. This is a developing story. It will be updated as we get more information into our newsroom. Also, yesterday, U.S. astronauts lift off for the International Space Station. We can tell you they made it to the International Space Station today. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
Next tonight, the historic liftoff this afternoon at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral. 2 astronauts now hurtling towards the International Space Station after NASA teamed up with SpaceX. ABC's Gio Benitez was there.
Tonight, the historic launch.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
American ambition and ingenuity blasting off, sending astronauts into space from U.S. soil for the first time in nearly a decade.
For the first human ride for Falcon 9, and it was incredible.
For astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, the day started with that famous walkout after bad weather scrubbed the last launch Wednesday. The two in their designer flight suits giving the thumbs up. Their wives, also astronauts, and their children. Hurley and wife Karen holding hands. Behnken with a message for his son. The crew taking Teslas to the launch pad with one final look before boarding the Crew Dragon and lifting off into history. SpaceX, created by Elon Musk, becoming the first private company to put astronauts into orbit, a mission NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine says will change the future.
We're proving that we can compound pharmaceuticals in a way that you cannot do on Earth. We're able to create immunizations in a way you cannot do on Earth. We're printing human organs in 3D. It's going to transform how we do medicine here on Earth.
Thousands gathering on the beaches of Florida to witness history. The successful launch, a moment of national unity, reminding us all of what people can do when they come together.
And Gio Benitez joins us now from the Kennedy Space Center. Gio, we were watching it together on the special we aired earlier. You were there to see it, to hear it, and feel it all.
Oh, Tom, and I gotta tell you, you could feel the power of that rocket as it hits supersonic speed. The ground shakes, your whole body shakes. It's really something else. And by the way, I should tell you that the next exciting moment happens tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. That's when they dock at the International Space Station. Tom.
All right, Gio, thank you for that. Hi, everyone.
Okay, and we can tell you that they did make it to the International Space Station today. And That does it for this evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. Thank you for joining us for this evening newscast. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. See you back here tomorrow for another newscast. Good night and bye.